Hello, everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women. This organization is for women to come together, to share their stories, to enjoy each other's journeys, celebrate each other's challenges and triumphs, and to have a common platform for all of us to come together and grow together. And Lean and Agile has several pillars to our organization. One of them is what we call spirals. This is groups of women coming together across the world, trying to stick together as a group, support each other through a framework called offer and seek. So you grow as a group, you stick as a group, you cheer each other as a group. And we have several spirals across the world right now, and we encourage anybody who can lead a group, who can facilitate a group, to come forward and start it in your own community. And the other aspect, or the other project that we are doing in 2019, is to bring 100 phenomenal women who have made a difference to our community, who have contributed positively to our community, and interview them through these video interviews series, and learn from their journeys and their challenges, and see if we can, pick one or two, quirks, or to understand how they have not just survived but thrived in their journey. And the idea here is all of us don't have to go through the same challenges. We can learn from each other and leverage and springboard off of each other's learnings and challenges. That's the idea of this video series. And as part of this series, today I'm super thrilled to bring you a very inspiring woman. She is the Chief ScrumMaster of Scrum Alliance, and she worked in various firms prior to this role as Lean and an Agile transformation change agent, bringing in transformation to those spaces. And she's the founder of Hummingbird Technology, through which she influenced several organizations again in shifting not just the transformation trajectories, but also the mindsets, leading to a sustained transformation. She's currently focusing all her energy in co-creating programs and platforms for Agilists around the world through Scrum Alliance. She was recently interviewed by Voyage Denver for their Trailblazers series by the side of several phenomenal women. I had the pleasure of meeting her recently, and I can vouch definitely that she is a great value addition to Scrum Alliance. Let's welcome Melissa Boggs to LIA100. Hey, Melissa, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for that warm introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And I had such a great time chatting with you during Agile 2019. Thank you for sharing your vision and, what's coming for the community. So thank you so much for that. So let's dive directly into this, interview. So, one of the things that I observed very profoundly in your profile, Melissa, is you've been a very active volunteer with Scrum Alliance and other community organizations. So, and then many of us, right, many women are interested in volunteering in some capacity, in some shape or form. Can you share your thoughts on, volunteering? Why should one volunteer? And, what does it do to you as a person and as a professional?
Sure. This is one of my favorite topics. So one of the things I would share with people is that in my earliest years as an Agilist, I was very lonely. I was often the only Scrum Master in my organization, then the only Agile coach. And in time, it just becomes exhausting to be the person kind of carrying that flag all by yourself. So I have to confess that my earliest motivations for volunteering were a little bit selfish. In that I was seeking connection, and I was seeking a way to, share my values with someone else and have them validate them and say, yes, I believe in that too. And so, my earliest volunteering, or even just participating in things like user groups, it was me seeking connection. And then as time went on and my journey kind of grew and I learned more, then I started to have empathy for the people who were where I had been. So I started looking back and going, okay, like how can I volunteer or how can I speak in a capacity that would help those lonely souls that were where I was before. Like now I found this connection and now I'm deeply connected to this community and I want to bring others in because I know what that feels like to kind of feel like you're on your own.
And, when you volunteer and when you make those connections, right, how do you go back and renew those connections and leverage those connections to advance your learnings?
Oh, that's, there's not a organization that I have been in or a scenario that I've walked into in which I had all the answers, right? And I think my fellow Agilists are in the same position. So, I've had the opportunity to create kind of little tribes, somewhat like what you're creating right here. Where it's like, oh, we're all in it together, whether it be Slack channels or, public forums or just phone calls that we have once a week, depending on the group. But I've always made kind of an effort to find people who were also in the same boat and want to have the same conversations, actually, more than the same boat. We want to have the same conversations because, this Agile thing is a journey and you have different needs and different conversations at different points in your journey and different points in your organization's journey. So kind of collecting those in some sort of theme like you've done here with women has been really helpful for me. And I hope that through that I've been able to give back to other people as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And so that kind of, I think, converged in you taking up this new role, right, of a Chief ScrumMaster in Scrum Alliance. And you've been with this organization, since January 2019, right?
Yeah.
So it's been about 7 months, 8 months now, almost. So what is that work looking like, Melissa, for you? What's happening and how are you kind of getting started?
So it's big work. So for those who aren't familiar, in our context, Chief Scrum Master is essentially the co-CEO. So I share the CEO role with Howard Sublett, who is the Chief Product Owner, world's best partner, by the way. But his role is very, like any product owner, his role is very focused on connecting our customers and their needs with our teams and their ability to deliver to that need. On the flip side of that coin, my role is being very connected to our teams and their needs and how can we be most prepared to deliver to those needs? How can we be structurally and culturally aligned to deliver what the community is seeking? And that work has been very aligned with what I was just describing around our journey. So we have built our teams to reflect the Agile journey in a sense. So we have cross-functional teams that are focused on, people who are very new or people who have been in it for 3 to 5 years, people who are coaches and trainers, and, there's several others. And the purpose of that is to not just be product-centric or certification-centric, but actually to be lead-centric and people-centric. So it's been quite a journey as the kind of Chief Scrum Master to help our teams understand how to work in that way and how to be cross-functional and how to be the most agile that we can be so that we can move with what the Agile community needs.
Yeah. And that seems to be a pretty vibrant role right there, right? Because you have an opportunity to influence and contribute at the same time. That's pretty incredible.
Yep. Yes, it is a rewarding and challenging, not just role for me, but place to be for our organization right now. Our goal is to model the business agility that we're all talking about.
Yeah.
And to model that journey and to be able to say like, hey, you can't just do that overnight.
Yeah.
It takes time, but it's worth it.
Yeah. It's for sure a journey more than just reaching the destination. So, and there is no destination because it's continuous improvement all along.
Yes.
Great. Yeah. And, talking of business agility, then, I know there were so many talks last week, during the conference about business agility. And we all know that it's not feasible or conducive to be agile as an enterprise, as a business, unless we are inclusive, right? From all aspects of diversity, not just gender diversity. And that's when you get a variety and, an array of options and rich feedback from all across, from all sections. For the purpose of this discussion, though, I would like to focus on gender diversity, and I want to kind of get your thoughts on, Scrum Alliance's vision to be more inclusive than it already is, because based on my observations and the know-how of Scrum Alliance, it's been very rich in diversity, right? All the way from organizers, track chairs, speakers, audience, and engagement. What's your plan to sustain that and also to improve even more to make that explicit space and an invitation for gender diversity?
So first, I just want to affirm how important it is. And I won't be able to quote her, but I actually remember this interview where I saw Tina Fey of, Saturday Night Live talking about gender diversity in the SNL writing room. And she gave an example of a joke that I think it was Amy Poehler that Amy shared it, and like all the men in the room, like they weren't upset with her and they weren't trying to be, um, without an open mind, but it was just a joke that would fall flat with men, and so having Tina in the room at that moment to say, no, this is funny and women are going to find this funny. She talks about how that shifted the momentum in that room, not just for that joke, but for other jokes, and it's obviously not Scrum Alliance, but I always think about that it's not about anyone trying to exclude anyone else. It's about people have to be at the table who are going to get it. And that means you have to have a diverse group of people at the table. Here at Scrum Alliance, starting with our team, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I actually would tell you I wouldn't be surprised if we had more women than men. I actually know one of our teams only has one man, and the rest of them are women.
Now, we need more diversity on that team.
Right, we do. We'll tell you that a lot. But it's not even just about men and women, right? Like there's a whole lot more to gender diversity than just this binary man and women piece. So yes, to your point, we have always, not only wanted to make inclusive decisions, but attract a diverse group of people to our team, to our gatherings, organizing teams, to our speakers. The very first talk I ever gave, it was me and a gentleman together. And even, even if you look at Howard and I, like we lead the organization and, it's the two of us together. And I think actually what comes up less with he and I than less than gender, or more than gender, I'm sorry, is just diversity of personality. And so that's actually a whole nother, yes, kind of aspect that you see within. In terms of how to sustain that or maintain it, the first piece is just awareness. And I think that we've been good so far about having that awareness. And then it's invitation, right? And it's a little bit of mentorship as well, that strong women in our community, and it's not just me and it's not just Scrum Alliance, but encouraging those relationships to develop and people to be encouraged. Yeah. And not just between women and women. Like I'll tell you, my mentors when I was coming up were men, but they were men who were willing to be allies and men who were willing to encourage me to, think further and push past the pain, if you will. So I'd also just point out that it's not just about women and women mentorship, but there are a lot of men out there who are willing to kind of push the envelope a little bit and say, no, hold on, she was speaking.
Yeah. No, I think you brought up a very good point, Melissa. And you'll see that in our vision as well in Lean and Agile, that this is not something, it's not a movement, it's not an initiative that we will do behind the doors, behind the closed doors, but it's very much a collaborative effort, and we absolutely want and invite men to be our allies. Because there are co-workers, there are bosses, there are performance reviewers, there are allies at work. They're everywhere, and we want to collaborate effectively by equipping ourselves with the confidence and filling that confidence gap. So, thank you for in fact touching on that.
And I'd actually add to that, there are some men who need some women allies too.
Yeah.
While there are some, some societal norms that we are working to challenge, when I kind of referred to the personality piece, I mean, I certainly had instances where, I stood up for a gentleman who was, in my group. And so I was able to do that because I had grown in my confidence and was able to say, like, make space for this other person as well. So I think it goes all the way back.
It does. It does. And while we are talking about that confidence that you just mentioned, Melissa, I ask this of every interviewee pretty much, and every woman that I talked to had an internal barrier in some shape or form at some point in her life, right? And most of them overcome, most of them don't. And some people, some women want to do something, or create something or write something, but there's always that internal dialogue, right? That we're not good enough. Am I an imposter? Who am I to even say that or do that? There's so many other intelligent people more than me. Or maybe after 5 years, when I learn this, that, and then I will do it. So there are all kinds of internal dialogues, and I'm assuming that you probably had that at one point or the other in some shape or form. Can you share, how did you overcome that very first hump, right? How did you even jump over that hump and, led your way, leading to where you are today?
So I can think of actually two humps. So I'll share both quickly.
Yeah.
The first was, I remember having a conversation with an Agile coach that I just so deeply respected. And in my mind, he was a celebrity. And, he was so far beyond where I was in my mind. And I had a conversation with him on the last day of a conference, just before we're about to leave. I'm like, okay, so I was just wondering if maybe you would maybe be my mentor, because I kind of one day want to be an Agile coach. And I had spent a lot of time with him throughout this conference, just in our little group of friends. And he kind of looked at me and he tilted his head and he goes, "What makes you think that you're not one already?"
Oh.
And I looked back at him and I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm not." And he said, "Here's what I heard this week that you've been doing." And he rattled off, 4 or 5 things that were all very Agile coachy things. And he said, "The only thing that's standing between you and, being the coach that you want to be is yourself, is embracing the fact that you are." And of course, we went on to talk about, there was lots of growth that I had. There was definitely lots of things that I could do to improve. But his point was, you just have to own it, right? You have to stand up in your, I love saying stand up to your full posture, right? You have to say, this is what I am. And then that same gentleman was the one I was referring to earlier, who the second hump was, okay, now I'm a coach, but I want to be a speaker. And I don't really have a lot of stage fright. I grew up actually singing on the stage. So it wasn't about stage fright, but it was the imposter syndrome of who cares what I have to say? And so he said, "Let's submit your first talk together and we'll do it together." And there was a very pivotal moment for me the day that we got the email that our talk was accepted. And it occurred to me that I had now stepped over some imaginary line that existed for me. There were non-speakers and speakers, and in that moment I realized how silly that was.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about there's non-speakers and speakers. It's
Yeah.
There are people who have a story to tell and are willing to tell it. And then there's, sometimes timing about when is the right time to tell that story. And so for me, like, that is the thing that I try to tell men or women alike is like, I was a springboard diver in high school, which is super weird, but I dove pool diving. And, the first time that you like do that big dive that you can't imagine in your head you could possibly do, and this diving board is way too high, and you just take a deep breath and you just jump, and you just do it. And after you've done it the first time, like every time after that is that much easier.
Right. Because
So,
I think there is a memory that comes back, right? From each speaking experience.
and it's also just, oh, I did it and I did not die.
Right.
I did it and I still had a job the next day and I still knew stuff the next day. I didn't forget everything I knew when I was standing up there. It's just, you just have to kind of, I hate to just say like, well, just do it. But if it helps to partner with someone like I did the first time, partner with someone who was confident. I have to tell you that like our technology in that talk, like totally failed us. And so I'm standing there like looking at him and going, I'm fine. He's here. We're just going to go.
Right.
Went through it. And so if it does help to pair up with someone to kind of help you build that confidence, whether that is coaching or speaking or hosting a user group or whatever it might be, it did help me to have someone by my side that first time. And then after that, then it wasn't a need, but it was a want. I've paired with a couple other people and it's always fun.
Yeah. No, I think that's an excellent suggestion, because you probably don't have that depth of confidence right at the first time, but pairing up with somebody sure at least gives you that nudge, that one step ahead that is much required, and usually that is the escape velocity that you need at that point, and after that you can zoom on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great suggestion. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I also wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, so you've been to many conferences in North America and you've been a very active member, volunteer and participant. What are some of the patterns that you've seen in these conferences with respect to, and I want you to kind of, I mean, there are many patterns that we can talk about, but if you can kind of narrow down the focus here on the women leadership, women participation, and women speakers that have kind of either gone up, gone down, or what did that space look like in the conferences from your experience?
I mean, certainly it's gone up. The number of women speakers, I think there's a lot more awareness. I'm pretty active on Twitter as well, and there's a very vibrant Agile community on Twitter. And, you hear men saying, I will not join that panel because there are no women on that panel. Don't ask me to be on a panel unless there are women.
Yeah.
Or no, I won't speak at that conference until I see your percentage go up of women. And so, or just of diversity. Again, I actually want to kind of make sure that we're not just focusing on men and women, that there's a spectrum, right, of diversity. But, certainly I've seen that there's just an awareness there that I think wasn't there before. Again, it's not always intentional to exclude people. You have to have an awareness that you're doing it and then, seek out those other voices and have allies like those, like those who are willing to say like, no, this panel, looks all the same. And so I'm not going to join that panel. So I've certainly seen it go up, and more than that, I've seen the awareness go up. I've seen a lot of pairing too, like I've seen a lot of paired speaking happen similar to what I had done with my partner. So that even that one talk has diversity, which is a neat thing to see. We talk a lot about pair programming.
Yeah.
Here at Scrum Alliance, we have pair leadership. And so to have it show up in talking is really neat too, in topics and in talks. because even in that one talk, there's a diversity of perspective in how we approach it and how we talk about it and what activities that we use. So I've certainly seen that increase and improve, and the awareness as well. So it's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good news that you just shared. So that is really good. Um, and for women participants that are coming, and I'm kind of honing in on that women aspect of this, because the purpose of these video series, to be honest, is to kind of assure and be assertive about the help and support that is out there. So that's what we're trying to bring up. So the conferences that Scrum Alliance supports and sponsors, right? There are many women participants and speakers and leaders that are bound to be there, right? Are there any programs or initiatives that Scrum Alliance is thinking about to kind of bring more visibility and focus to that section of participants?
There are a number of programs within our community, for one, that are, yours being one of them. Lisa Adkins and 10 Women Strong is another. Women in Agile. We have close relationships with all of those because they are all part of our community, and so we're continually going to be supporting them. So I would say, looking to those first. We're certainly having conversations about, how do you bring that together in more than just a talk, or how do we look at that at a gathering? But I'm still fairly new in my role, so I have to say, 7 months in, we haven't committed to anything at this point. But I would say a lot of it exists in a really neat way, multiple areas on a smaller scale. And you and I talked at Agile 2019 about how each one of those, like, it's neat because they're not competitive, they're complementary. Yes. And if you're looking for, kind of a bigger event, then Women in Agile holds their, kind of one-day event before, like, the Agile conferences. But if you're looking for something more intimate and small, then 10 Women Strong, they're kind of a smaller cohort. So there's things like that kind of exist in the community already. And, we are absolutely looking at ways that we can support those and then also in the future maybe add to it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then thank you for kind of, having that intention and focus on that as an organization. So as we wrap up then, Melissa, can you share with us some of the learning resources that, you have in your back pocket? It could be a book, an author, podcast, a web series, whatever that is.
Sure. A quick anecdote real quick. When I was in my earliest days, not even as an Agilist, but it was my first time just being an IT manager. And it was so long ago, but I was very young and had a peer manager who was a dear friend. I mean, I would almost say like a brother to me. He was very assertive, very aggressive in his, it was very what you would expect from kind of a traditional manager. And he kept telling me, oh, you need to be more aggressive and you need to be this and you need to be this. And he was basically describing himself. And not just as an Agilist, but just as a woman in leadership in the world, when I recognized the power that I had. I am an introvert. I am much more likely to ask questions than to direct someone. And when I recognized the power in that like literally just being myself and being vulnerable and the courage that was required to do that was just as powerful as him. Like, I'm not, negating what he brought to the table either.
Right.
Then I began to be able to harness that. And a couple of years later, he even recognized it. And he even said, like, I see now that, like, you just bring a different strength to the table. And so for that reason, I share that because Brene Brown and her work on courage and vulnerability.
Yeah.
She has a number of books. She has a Netflix special. She has TED Talk. She has a lot of work out there just about how much courage it does take to be vulnerable, and how, you know, leaning into like your soft self is okay. And that has helped me immensely. So her work, and then also Marcus Buckingham, who talks about leaning into your strengths rather than trying to fix weaknesses that you may never be successful in fixing. Like, why not pour into things that are uniquely yours and bring that to the table?
Yeah.
Both of those have deeply impacted how I am as a person, much less a woman leader.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm gonna go back and, you know, search on the next myself.
Brown, Marcus Buckingham.
Got it. Okay. And is there any last thought or quote or a word that you live by that you would like to share with our audience?
I had it written on this whiteboard wall in front of me until just a little while ago, but I heard a phrase once. I mentioned earlier, you know, standing up to your full posture.
Yeah.
Another one that's very similar, but it is walk worthy. And so when I say walk worthy, it means a couple of things, like living in accordance to your values and, you know, being worthy of yourself, but also recognizing when other people have chosen you, right? So you've been chosen to give this talk, or you have been chosen to volunteer. It's kind of the antidote to imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
Walk worthy of that choice that people made in you. So walk worthy is one of the things that I live by.
Walk worthy. That's a very fantastic, you know, statement right there. Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa, you know, for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, your journey, and, you know, especially about, you know, peer speaking, you know, to have a partner with the speakers and walking worthy. You know, it's been a very valuable, you know, time right here with you. Thank you so much for your willingness to participate. And welcome to LIA100.